America is really an awesome country. And one of the things that helped create it that way and help keeps us on that great path is the U.S. Constitution. The Founding Fathers created a near perfect document when they wrote the U.S. Constitution. And they had the foresight to know that as things change, that Constitution must be amended. And so they put provisions in the Constitution for change. And most of the time, everything goes well, but sometimes subsequent generations after the Founding Fathers have either twisted the intent of the Founding Fathers put in the Constitution, or they even outright made some amendments that were bad for the country. One of those amendments that I think is terrible for the country is the 16th Amendment. So the 16th Amendment allowed the federal government to charge an income tax. So why is the income tax so bad? Well, let me start off with a quote from Congressman Ron Paul. Dr. Paul said, "Accepting the principle behind both the income and the estate tax concedes the statist notion that the government owns the fruits of our labor as well as our savings, and we are permitted by the politicians' generosity to keep a certain percentage. Every tax cut proposal in Washington is now considered a cost to the government, not a return of something rightfully belonging to a productive citizen." So what he's saying is that the income tax means that the government has first dibs on anything you ever earn. And that's an anathema to the Founding Fathers. In fact, the Founding Fathers were so against an income tax that they not only wrote in the Constitution once, but twice that there shouldn't be any. First, in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, basic words, no income tax. And then in Article 5, where they talk about how to amend the Constitution, they say that the Constitution can be amended, and they put the formula to do that in Article 5, but they put a caveat that says a couple of things can't be amended in at least for another 21 years. In fact, they put the date 1808 on it. And one of those items that they said should not be amended until 1808 was the part of the Constitution that says no income tax. So they'd be rolling over in their graves right now if they knew our income tax system. Well, the 16th Amendment, which was ratified in 1913, changed that. It allowed the income tax. And it's important to think about the debate that was going on at that time. When the amendment to the Constitution was being debated in Congress, one congressman brought up the fact that what happens if, so he said, what happens if someday, not us, but someday some other congressman down the road raise the income tax to an intolerable rate, like 10%. Well, the chamber laughed. They just laughed at this congressman and said, nobody would ever raise it to anything high like 10%. That's just crazy. Well, the income tax did pass. And the first year, they set the top rate at 7%. And it was only people that were making tons of money would be taxed at that 7% rate. So most people kind of, didn't protest too much because it wasn't a huge tax. But it went up, and it went up quickly. In fact, at sometimes the income tax was as high as the mid-90s, like 94%. 94% of everything you earned was taxed. It's crazy. And now it's closer to 37%. So it's went up a little bit and then come back down. 37% still way too high. But it's not as high as some politicians wanted. In fact, later when we talk about FDR, he didn't get it passed, but he said he would be comfortable with a 99% income tax rate. 99%, that's just crazy. And if you're thinking that was an idea that was way in the past and nobody would think of it again, you better check yourself, because in this last presidential election, one of the main contenders for the U.S. presidency, Senator Bernie Sanders, said he would be comfortable with a income tax rate in the high 90s. Thankfully, we didn't get something like that, but just consider that you had a modern politician from a major party who almost got their nomination, says he's comfortable with a high 90s income tax. Wow, that's just crazy. So I'd like to finish off just thinking about a few thoughts. If someone gives something for a good cause, or really any cause of their own free will, that would be charity. If somebody takes something from them against their will, that's theft. Well, when the government takes something against your will, they just call it taxes.